record. All right, we finished the beautiful mimer in Lakuti Torah about Vayikra and the small Aleph and how God called to Moshe and how he's calling to us through Torah and through the commandments. The commandments are like God calling to us, and the Torah is like the holy temple, and that the same revelation is actually there as was in Moshe, and that God helps him by calling him this small Aleph even more than Abraham. We remember we learned that beautiful. Now let's start preparing for Pesach. Now we're going to prepare for Passover. Next week is going to be Passover. Well, not next week. Not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday. In other words, Saturday night is going to be Passover. That's when we're going to have the. So let's learn a little bit about Pesach. All right. Okay, so first of all, on Passover is also called Chag HaMatzot. It's called the holiday of Matzot because we eat matzot. And the Jewish people ate matzot. One of the oldest commandments there are for the Jewish people. The Jewish people received the commandment of eating matzot when they received the commandment of sanctifying the month. Right? That's what we learned last Shabbat. We read last Shabbat in Parshat HaChodesh that God commanded the Jewish people to sanctify the month. They had to understand when the new months were beginning, but what they actually do, the first commandment they actually did was they slaughtered the Pesach offering and they ate it together with matzah and bitter herbs. And eating matzah, in addition to the fact that they ate it together with the Pesach offering, but it's also a separate commandment to eat matzah. Eat matzah, and that commandment is right now. As well, we don't have a Korban Pesach anymore. We don't offer the Pesach offering until the Mashiach will come and build a third temple. And we don't have the commandment from the Torah to eat the moror, the bitter herbs. That's only a commandment when we eat the Pesach offering, even though we do it nowadays, but it's only a custom. A rabbinical commandment, if you want to call it. It's a rabbinical commandment today. I'm sorry, not a custom. It's a rabbinical to eat the moror. The bitter herbs, but matzah is from the Torah. Now that's the positive side of it. That's the upside of the commandment. The downside of the commandment, the prohibition, is that it is forbidden to eat chametz. One of the worst sins in Judaism is to eat chametz on Passover. Eat chametz on Passover. It's punishable by heavenly punishment. It's a heavenly punishment. The person doesn't get killed by the judicial court for eating it, but still is a heavenly punishment. Eating matzah on Pesach, eating chametz, chametz on Pesach, very, very bad. What's the difference between chametz and matzah? Well, matzah is made from flour and water, and chametz is made from flour and water. In other words, the exact same thing. They have the exact same ingredients. The only difference is that matzah, you don't allow that dough to sit for any amount of time. Some people say it's 18 minutes. In any case, that's in a regular, normal temperature room. But if it's a warm room, then it's even shorter. Don't let that water and that flour and water, that dough, which is made of flour and water, you don't let it sit without kneading it for 18 minutes. If you do that, that's it. Chametz, one of the worst sins in the world. If you catch it before 18 minutes, 17 minutes, and then you can make matzah, one of the biggest mitzvahs, one of the biggest commandments in Judaism is to eat matzah on Passover. And one of the biggest sins is to eat chametz on Passover, God forbid. And the difference between these two is just a couple seconds. You let it rise up. That's it. I mean, I don't advise anyone to wait 18 minutes, even to wait, 10 seconds. You're supposed to work on it all the time. The dough. It's supposed to be worked on all the time. You're working on it, doesn't rise up. So you have to work. But the difference between it's exact same ingredients. The only difference is that one was left a little longer. What happens when you leave dough alone is it puffs up, it rises up imperceptibly at first, but eventually you see it that it starts getting like little white. It gets white. It swells up. Starts getting like cracks on it on the surface. And if you leave it long enough, it'll raise up. I mean, now the person that makes bread, of course, they put a yeast or something inside of it that makes it raise up, but will raise up on its own. And that's called chametz, and it's a big sin to eat it. So basically the only difference is that chametz is puffed up a little bit. It's deceptive. What you see, in other words, something that's big and is not really what there is. It's really just flat, same ingredients as matzah is, but because of the air inside of it, so it makes it look bigger. So that's corresponding to egotism. Egotism can be your worst enemy. On the other hand, God put us in this world in order to be ourselves. You got to be yourself. God doesn't want, zombies. Everybody's exactly the same, looking the same, thinking the same. God definitely does not want that. He wants everybody to be unique and everybody to contribute his potential in the world. So that's a very thin line between bad egotism, represented by chametz, and good egotism, which is represented by matzah, or if you want to call it humility. We'll talk about good egotism at the end of this mimer, very short mimer. This comes from a book which is called Derech MItzvotcha. Derech MItzvotcha is a book that was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. Maybe we can get a little picture of it here, page 58. Let's go back here, see if we can get, why not try this? There it is, Derech MItzvotcha. See, written by Menachem Mendel, the third Rebbe of Chabad. It was also called Menachem Mendel, called the Tzemach Tzedek of Lubavitch. He was the grandson of the first Rebbe of Chabad. Back to the Maimer. All right. So this is Derech MItzvotcha. It takes some of the commandments and explains them according to Kabbalah, and then explains the Kabbalah according to Chassidut. Chassidut makes the Kabbalistic explanations and aspects of Judaism, it makes them practical, day to day. In other words, practical means to bring you to love of God, fear of God, love of your fellow man, fear of doing wrong. Let's go. Shalol lechol chametz. It is forbidden as a transgression. It is forbidden to eat chametz. Okay. The previous mimer, we explained in the previous mimer, this one here, paragraph, the mitzvah of eating matzah. Now let's just flip back over here. Hope I'm not confusing anybody, but here we have the commandment. The commandment of eating matzah. And he'll explain in a short way what it says in this mimer. Where is it? Here it is. Oh, here. Here. The mitzvah of no. Yeah. Yochanan Hashem. Here, the mitzvah of eating matzah. So here he explains the mitzvah of eating matzah. One of the commandments of Passover, eating matzah. Positive commandment. Another commandment is to tell about the going out of Egypt, the Haggadah. It's also a commandment. Oh, shalom. Okay, so now we're going to learn this mimer. Here we go. You've learned this before. See, we learned this, Mr. Smith, we learned this mimer in class. Here we go. Ready? We're going to learn. It's beautiful. It's matzah. Transgression of eating matzah. Okay, after we explained the commandment of eating matzah, what's the commandment of eating matzah? So it's a commandment, you just do it, right? But the Chassidut comes to explain what's really going on there and how to get us excited about it. Matzah is called the food of faith. Now it explains over there, why is matzah called the food of faith? So there's several reasons, 3 of them especially. Number 1, it's a commandment. And it's a commandment that you put inside of yourself. It's a commandment that you take this commandment and you digest it and it becomes part of you. Something like learning Torah. You learn Torah, it comes inside of you. That's why Torah is also compared to bread. But here, Torah is a little bit difficult. Here's a commandment for everybody. Right? You don't have to have any intelligence, any IQ. You just take the matzah and you eat the matzah. Matzah is called the food of faith. Why is it called the food of faith? Number 1, it's a commandment. The commandment, no, yes, it is. The Gaon of Vilna and others, they say that it's a commandment. You make a mitzvah, you make a blessing every day. Right. There are some people that say that it's a mitzvah every day. It says Shivas Yamim Tochal Matzot, but we don't. Most of the Jewish people, they don't. The only commandment is the first kazayat. Only just the first, whatever it is, ounce or something, of matzah, that you eat the night of Passover. That's the only commandment. If you don't want to eat any more matzah on Passover, you don't have to. 1 kazayat of matzah on the first night. That's the commandment. That's the commandment. You make a blessing on that, and you never have to eat matzah the rest of the time if you don't want to, Passover. Okay. I mean, of course, you can't eat the chametz. That's what we're going to learn here. So it says, okay, so matzah, what is matzah? Matzah gave the Jewish people faith. It took a mitzvah and put it inside of them, a commandment inside of them. Number 1. Number 2, matzah was eaten in Egypt. The Jewish people ate the matzah in order to get out of Egypt. It was one of the commandments that they did in order to prepare themselves for leaving Egypt. Another thing is that matzah is very simple. It's called lechem oni, bread of poverty. That's what faith in God is. Faith in God is very simple, very basic. For our purposes, you put yourself on the side. You ignore all of your own feelings and your own egotism. And that's when you can really believe in God. Because at least you can start to understand what we're talking about. And when everything is gone, God is still there. That's like matzah. It's very simple. Everything, just the ingredients are there, right? There's nothing, it's not blown up at all. That's basic faith. So therefore, it's called the food of faith. And we'll see there's another reason, and also because it's made of wheat. Matzah is made of wheat. And in the Gemara, it says that wheat was the tree of knowledge. There's one opinion. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was wheat. That was the tree. That was the tree. And it's called the tree of knowledge. Knowledge in Chassidut is stressed very much that knowledge means connection. Like it says, the man knew his wife. So a child, it says a child will know his parents, can't really know his parents until he eats wheat. That's what it says in the Gemara, until he eats wheat. So we can't really know God until we eat wheat, the commandment of matzah. In other words, commanded wheat. That's matzah. So we're going to look and see. Let's see. After we explain the mitzvah of eating matzah, matzah is called the food of faith, right? Because of its simplicity, and because of the fact that it's made from wheat, and because of the fact that it's a commandment that we take inside of us. Now we can understand the azhara, the prohibition of chametz. Why it's so bad to eat chametz on Passover. We eat it the whole rest of the year, right? Nothing wrong with it. All of a sudden on Passover, ooh, the worst. That's it. The worst avera is eating chametz on Passover. Worse than eating pork. Ki agam shehu min dagan, even though that it's a type of grain, wheat, and a grain, and a child knows to call his mother and father. That's what it says over there in the Gemara. It's in Brachot. It's, if I'm not mistaken, it says that there's different opinions. What was the tree that Adam ate from that gave him knowledge of good and bad? So one opinion says that it was wheat because a child does not know how to call his parents. He doesn't recognize them, doesn't connect with them in a human way until he eats wheat. Okay, anyway, that's what it says. So therefore, Hainu, namely when he eats matzah, he is connecting to Ava v'Ima b'Shamayim, his father and mother. And I'm sorry, when he eats regular bread, regular wheat, then he connects to his father and mother, physical. But to reach by means of eating this wheat, to call his father and his father in heaven, that's the mitzvah by matzah. Matzah is what's called lechem oni. So first of all, it has grain in it, wheat, which enables him to connect to his father. And also it's called poor bread, belihit nasut, without any elevation. Matzah, flat. No elevation, v'hagba'ah, or swelling up the horot to indicate al-an bechinat emunah, on this level of emunah, faith in God. Right? If you believe in God because of all these reasons, you've been convinced, and you logically understand that there's God, there must be God, there has to be a creator, there has to be an order, nothing creates itself. And all these reasons you have for believing in God, it's not going to work. I mean, it'll, to a certain degree, yeah, it'll put you maybe in a direction. But for every logical reason there's a logical reason there isn't, right? There's a logical reason there isn't. And for the simple, just obvious reason, nobody ever saw God, you can't use some sort of an instrument. And not only that, there's all these explanations that they have, right? There's a lot of genius people that don't believe in God at all, right? And they can explain it. Somehow or other, they explain it. Just like space is infinite. You can't, so maybe time is infinite. Things always existed. Who knows? Nevertheless, faith, on the other hand, emunah, means putting your understanding aside. Right? You believe in God because something in my soul tells me to do it. Something like a person's conscience, something like that, right? A person feels, no, this is the wrong thing to do. I can't steal. I can't, right? I can't do it. Why not? Right? All the Nazis are going and killing people, and suddenly some Nazi says, this is wrong. I can't do this. What do you mean it's wrong? Everyone's doing it. We've been convinced it's the most wonderful thing in the world. We're going killing people. We're victorious. We're making a big Germany. It says, I can't kill people. I just can't do it. Why? What's wrong? You saw something, you read a book, something like that. No, this is what I feel. It's the same thing. A person can feel that there's God. That's called emunah. Emunah, some sort of a perception, a certainty. We're not talking about spirituality. There are people that are spiritual. Everybody has a spirit. Everybody's alive. You have a soul. That's not faith. That's not faith. That you have a soul. Everybody has a soul. A dog has a soul. A cat has a soul. Right? People don't have a mind. So where does my soul come from? What's going to happen after I die? So he comes to the conclusion that there's God. That's not really faith. Emunah means a feeling that there's a creator that's totally above understanding, is creating everything from nothing and for a reason. That there's no logical reason to suppose a thing like that. What does that add to me? That I think that there's maybe if it's psychologically, maybe it adds on. So then that's not emunah anymore. That's not really faith. So in a way, it's not really a good word. I don't know if in English there really is a corresponding word to emunah. I don't know if there's emunah, if there's really a corresponding, but I guess the closest you can get to is the word faith. Because faith usually implies that you're, like in business, You're making a big investment, throwing all your money. When you have faith, it's going to be okay. It's going to come out to you, right? That's faith. Okay, there is also that aspect in Judaism. But here what he's talking about is faith means that throwing yourself totally on the Creator, and that there is a Creator, and that He's good. These are things you can't prove. You can't prove. You just believe it. You feel it. You believe it somewhere in your soul. How do you get this to be active inside of you? Says the Rebbe, the Jewish people got it by eating matzah. Shehi bechinas katnus, which matzah indicates a smallness of understanding, like an infant. It's below understanding. He doesn't understand what God is. Something like a child, when a child eats bread, so there's so many other people around, that's what it says in the Gemara, that he can recognize his father because he eats bread. Humanly recognizes his father. Not like animals also recognize, but this is can connect to his father. He doesn't understand that this person is his father. He doesn't understand psychology and physiology and sociology and all these things. You're right. This man is my father. Why? Because he provides. He doesn't understand anything. It's a little child. He's what is it? When the children started eating bread, I already forgot. My children are already old. And when they're, I don't know, 3 months old, half a year old, whenever that is, they can recognize. This recognition of the Creator, right? Recognition, our Father in heaven. This is what's called bittul. The Shorsho in the source comes from this level, Kabbalistic level, which is called chachma, koach ma, the power of surrender. Although isat chametz, but chametz, right? What do they call leavened bread? More, this indicates al hagba. This is elevation, vitnasut, and the bigness, shetafach va'ola, that it expands and rises lamaila, above, and this hints at what's called gedolat hasaga. This hints at what's called mature understanding. Yesh v'davar ma, namely to be a separate thing. Well, to be a yesh and to be a separate, that's good. I mean, that's what we're created for, right? To be productive. Like I said before, God doesn't want everybody to be like lobotomized. You know, they used to do this operation called lobotomy. It just took away a person's personality. So but on the other hand, people didn't do anything wrong, right? You did a lobotomy, they would cut off some frontal part of the brain. In the 50s, they used to do this. They stopped doing it. And it just makes the person that he has no personality. So he can't do anything wrong, but he can't do anything right either. He's just there. He can eat and sleep, and that's it. So that's what God wants. He wants us to be like that, with no personality, just to throw ourselves on him totally. Says, no, but in Passover, it's bad. Pesach, because what is Pesach? Pesach is the birth of the Jewish people. We're supposed to be like babies. That's the beginning of the receiving of faith of the Jewish people, because that's the essence of Jewish people, is this connection to God. So in order to have the basis of your life being this emunah, and then upon that build your understanding and your intellect. But you can't build your life on intellect, at least according to Judaism, you can't. It's tzorech liot, in order that the person can have this basic, first of all, connection to God above understanding. Tzorech liot, it has to be the avoda, our service, in a way of bittul v'katnos. It has to be in a way of total surrender, and to be like an infant, bilvad, alone, unquestioning. Afilu kulanu, like we say in the night of the Seder Pesach, afilu kulanu chachamim, navonim v'yadim, even if we are all wise and understanding and we know the whole Torah, nevertheless it is a commandment for us to talk about going out of Egypt. Why? Even though I happen to be the biggest genius in the world, ki avadim hayinu, we were slaves to Paro, v'yotzeinu Hashem, and God took us out of Egypt. Even Moses, the greatest, wisest, most powerful, talented leader, if it wasn't for God taking him out, he would still be there right now, right? With all of his wisdom and all of his power and all of his intelligence and leading abilities. But tzorechim lahizaher, but tachlis, we have to be very careful from chametz. Chametz is what's called yesh v'davar ma. Now, this is the holiday of the birth of the Jewish people. So we have to be like babies. We have to eat this baby food, which is called matzah. Doesn't raise up. It has no personality. And we have to be very careful from bread that rises up. Shu yesh v'davar. This is like egotism and selfishness. Masha ein or ein sof shura. It says the light of God does not rest in such selfishness. Now we're going to learn later on in this mimer in the bottom that selfishness happens to be a very good thing, and that in fact that's the why we're created in the world, is to be ourselves. But the question is, what is it built on? If your selfishness is built on myself, then that's not good. If your selfishness is built on, it's a gift from God. I have to use it the way God wants. How do you know God exists at all? It says, I feel it. That's what comes from matzah. That's called the food of faith. So nimshach b'mi shehu yesh v'davar. This says because ein or ein sof, the infinite light of God, is not drawn on a person who is yesh v'davar, who is an egotist and selfish. Ein u'shora el misha batel etzlo, and godliness does not rest except for those who are surrendered to God. Right? They don't worry about themselves all the time. They're not thinking about themselves all the time. They're not occupied with themselves all the time. So this is the secret of what it says, Hashem b'chachma, that God is in wisdom, because this level of wisdom we said was surrender, koach ma. Ki chachma is koach ma, is the power of ma. Ma means surrender. Means surrender. Ma, like what is it? Like no, it's nothing. Okay, now we're going to a little bit of Kabbalah. Well, Pri Eitz Chaim, the book which is called Pri Eitz Chaim. Pri Eitz Chaim is sort of a little more condensed. It's one of the books of Rav Chaim Vital, and it's a little bit sort of condensed ideas of the book Eitz Chaim. Okay, the Pri Eitz Chaim, it explains the Sod Chametz, that the secret of Chametz and Soor is like yeast, like sourdough. This is Chesed and Gevura of Dat of Katnut, that comes from Yenika, that comes from them, Yenika Lechitzoni. That's what he says. It comes from the Chesed and Gevura, from the kindness, the giving aspect, and the severe aspect, which is in Katnut, which is in the connection to reality that comes from small-mindedness. And it comes from this Yenika Lechitzoni. Okay, Sa'ar v'chametz, what is it? On Passover, we're like little babies. We're like little children, right? That's where we are Passover. You cannot eat chametz on Passover. Why? Because a little child, if he gets egotistical, it's really bad news. That you took my lollipop from me. He walked in. I wanted to say something. Why did he say that? All of a sudden they get angry and lust, and they have crazy. If for instance, little children in a class, kindergarten, if the teacher is good, so he keeps them occupied all the time, which means they're not thinking about themselves. They're doing something outside of themselves. As soon as the children start to think, let's say the teacher goes out for a moment, then the kids start to go crazy, right? They go crazy. They fight with each other and they throw sand at each other and they laugh and they become cruel and destructive. It's really amazing. There's no teacher there to teach them. It's just insanity. So that's what it means. Chesed and Gevura, of connection to reality, of smallness that comes from smallness. And from that comes, Yenika, comes a nurture to all bad things. So let's look and see what this is. I know I took a lot of classes in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Always very interesting to me. And one of the main things is that all of these addictions, they come from, how do you say, the rikuz atzmi, too much attention to yourself. A person starts thinking about himself too much, and life just becomes such a pain and so uncomfortable that he takes a drug. Oh, now everything is okay. Now he's satisfying me. I have to receive. So he says that's called being like a baby. And from being a baby comes bad things. That's why a baby has to have this surrender to people who are above him. As soon as he becomes egotistical, then there's bad things. Let's explain this. That's what Chamtez is. Chamtez is egotism on Passover. When you're a baby, you're just beginning. There's no place for egotism there. Let's understand the word chametz. Chet mem tzaddik. And the word, the letters of the word Matza. Now, if you look and see, the two words chametz and matzah have exactly the same letters, almost. Chametz has a mem and a tzaddik. Matzah has a mem and a tzaddik. The only difference between them is chametz has the letter chet in the beginning, and hey and matzah has the letter hey, and it's in the end. So let's not look at the placement of the letters. Let's just look at the letters themselves. So it ends up that matzah and chametz. Now matzah is very good on Passover. That's humility. That's faith. Chametz is very bad on Passover. Very bad on Passover. That's egotism and selfishness. The difference between them is just the letter hey or the letter chet. And the difference between the letter hey and the letter chet is also a very small difference. They're exactly the same, 3 sticks, right? It's like a little box, but a hey has a little space over here. See a little hole over there. And the letter chet doesn't have that letter hole, had that hole. See, it's closed in. So let's look. Let's look at the word chametz and the word matzah. Shehefresh b'neim. The difference between them is that then the letter chet alone, which that's in chametz, ubamakomo, and in its place in matzah, the letter hey. So the mem and the tzaddik are the same in matzah and chametz. The only difference is in matzah there's the letter hey, and chametz there's the letter chet. Like it's written in a Kabbalah book called Raya Mehemna. It's a part of the Zohar. The inyan is that the chet, the letter chet, and the letter hey, both of them have 3 sticks. The Haim Romazim, and these 3 sticks indicate to Chesed, Gevura, Chachma, Bin, and Das, that's on the top, intellect. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, that's the right side. And Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Netzach, Hod, Yesod, that's the left side. And the whole letter Hey, and the letter Chet, that represents Malchut. That represents the lowest aspect of God. So hey, in other words, the letter hey, that's sort of like the baby. That's like infantile, infant consciousness. The letter hey, or the letter chet, that's malchut. So there's 3 aspects of the malchut. The top of it, right? Like the letter hey, what does it look like? Like that, right? It looks like a little box, right? So the top of the box is Chachma Bin and Das. The top of the box, that represents intellect. Kavi, meaning the right side of this box, see the letter hey there? This is Chesed Gevurah Tiferet. And the left, that's the right side, the right stick. And the left stick, which in a hey, it's broken, right? Doesn't reach the top, and on a chet, it reaches the top. That represents Netzach, Hod, and Yesod, the lowest 3 sfirot. Hine b'chet, in the letter chet, the left side is closed. It's closed. It closes. There's no space between it and the ceiling. Rak hapetach hu lamata. There's only one opening, and that is below. See here. Look at the letter chet. See the letter chet. Let's see. Maybe I can get it over here. 1 second. How do we do this here? Oh, the pointer. We got our pointer. Here, see the letter chet? Here's the letter chet. Maybe I make it a color, huh? Can I do it a color? Huh? Let's see. That. Didn't work. Okay. The letter chet is closed up on this left side. The letter hey is open. See the opening there on the letter hey? So it says in the letter chet, the only opening in the letter chet, this is a chet, the only opening is below. This lamata, visham, and there, that's where the external forces nurture. Because this is God's kingship. Who creates bad? Where did bad come from? God is creating it. So it says bad comes from this aspect of malchut, God's kingship. God's kingship creates the world, right? Malchuto b'kol mishal, it's everywhere. So it also creates evil. How does God's malchut, the letter hey of God, create evil? It says when this hey is closed up, there's no opening above. There's only an opening below. When a person is only open below, there's no opening above, then a person is an egotist. What's an egotist? He only thinks about himself. He thinks he's God. He's the highest. Everything else is below him. That's where evil comes from. This is the secret of Galot HaShekhinah. That's the secret of the exile of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is God, in God's name, is the last letter of God's name, Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, Hey of God's name. And Galut means that the Hey is not connected to what's above it. It's closed here. That's why Jews wear a kippah, a yarmulke on their head, to indicate there's something above me, above my intelligence. So that little space there, that's a good thing, right? Sham besofo yom kim achitzoni kim midat malchus. This is the secret of the Galash Shechin. Like it says in the Zohar. So this letter of Chet, which is in Chametz, this indicates on pure egotism and selfishness. Only open below, no opening to anything above me. That's what's explained in the Zohar and in the book Eitz Chaim, according to Ragleh Yordos Movis, like it says in Mishlei. You ever read the book of Proverbs? Proverbs, a little bit scary book. The book of Proverbs, it says that there's the evil woman that calls to you from the lurking places in the corners and says, come, let's enjoy my wine. Her lips are sweet as honey and her feet go down to death. Ragleha Yordot Movet. That's the secret of this letter Hey, that the opening is only below. That Netzach Hod Yesod, the lowest three aspects of the soul, become drawn down into the lower worlds, what's called Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, that there is where klippas come from. That's where evil is. But the letter Hey, which is in Matza, there's a space between the left foot and the roof. Here, the letter Hey, you see the letter Hey? There's a little space there. There it says, her mouth is open to wisdom. We say this in Shabbos. Also comes from Proverbs, but it's the end, the last paragraph of Proverbs. This is a ray of God's chachma. We said, what is this chachma? Awareness of God. Faith that shines into malchut, which shines into our personality, like I said before. And that's the whole secret of the Jewish people going out of Egypt. Egyptians were big sorcerers, and it worked for them. They were big sorcerers, big sinners, and it really went. He ruled over the whole world. Egypt ruled the whole world. They were master sorcerers. They were master magicians, and they were master egotists. And God took the Jews out of that, right? The Jewish people are supposed to be my people. Like I said before, when we talked about the mitzvah of eating matzah. And that's what happens when you eat matzah, is there's this ray that comes through this letter Hey of godliness, mahi, what it is that gives you this feeling, which is above, totally above understanding. That's faith. Matzah is the food of faith, but chametz indicates the exact same thing, but when it's closed off to anything above you. Hine chachma kativ, it says yamuta. So the Egyptians were normal. They were normal, intelligent, powerful, practical, successful people. And God said, I want you to do all those things. That's really wonderful to be successful, wonderful. I want you to do it on my terms, not on your terms. That's matzah. Matzah is, let's start from the beginning. How do you say reset? Right? Like you press the reset button on your computer, press reset. That's what the going out of Egypt was. From now on, you're going to be my people. You're not the servants of power, you're the servants of me, my servants. That's what it says, that they will die, but not with chachma. Chachma is the secret of eternal life. maybe not physical life, but you're attached to the truth, and the truth is eternal. That the external forces, which are called death, they cannot stand pure faith, pure wisdom. Can't stand it. Is bittul koachma, which is bittul koachma, like we said before, total surrender to the truth. And this is the secret of matzah. Eating this matzah, in other words, attaches a person to something totally above his understanding. It puts it inside. It becomes an integral part of our day-to-day life, our personality. Therefore, because of this tremendous revelation of chachma, of wisdom, which is in the opening, this knocks away all of the evil forces. Then hay also has this opening below, but because there's the opening on the top, so therefore it, limits the amount of egotism that you do. So let's just go back to this terrible example that I'm giving all the time about this person. Let's say he's the murderer. Let's not go out there. He's a murderer, right? And he enjoys it. He really enjoys it. It's exciting. And murders people. He feels like he's God. And suddenly, all of a sudden, just pops into his mind this thought of, why am I doing this? This is a bad thing. Maybe this is wrong. Right? Where did this idea come from? Wrong. He knows he's not going to get caught. No way he's going to get. He's the chief of police, right? He's the king, right? He's the king. No one can put him into jail. Nothing. He's got the army behind him, everything. But suddenly he gets a thought, man, what I'm doing here is wrong. This is not right, right? So all of a sudden now he's not the boss anymore. He's not. The letter chet means there's nothing above me. Suddenly he starts to feel there's something above me. Then it becomes hard. Okay, it becomes harder for him to do whatever he wants. Of course, what comes from above can also be, the compromise. That's the idea of idolatry. Idolatry is that a person connects to something above him, but for his own self, for myself. That's not really true faith. That's just like a better business deal, right? Why should I put my money into, buying, a horse and a wagon? I'll go and I'll buy a real truck. It's a better investment. Why should I invest in the pleasures of this world? I'll invest in spiritual pleasures. They're eternal. That's not really the faith we're talking about. We're talking about that a person really connects to the creator of the universe that gave the Torah. That's the whole point. And that's what we get on matzah. That's why eating matzah was the preparation for receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. So that's the whole idea of matzah, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow, Sunday. And there's another mimer I want to learn also on Sunday, and we'll see what we'll learn. But this is mimer on matzah, Passover. So Pesach is the time when we receive faith in God, a connection to the creator of the universe. And we take it, but it has to be taken inside of us. So that's really a part of our flesh, day to day, that we're living with our creator and we're doing what our creator wants. That's the idea of matzah on Pesach. And that's also why it's so bad to eat chametz, as we'll talk about more, God willing, next time. Okay, right, let's go. Wait a second. There's a question here. Yes, we will have a class tomorrow. There will be a class tomorrow. Yes, we're learning a sikha. You're going to see the sikha we're going to learn. Ready? Good. Here we go. Stop the share.